The pain that shot through Rebecca's arm when her mother-in-law Martha Edwards shoved her against the kitchen counter was nothing compared to the humiliation burning in her chest. It was September 1882 in San Pedro, California, and the small wooden house felt suffocating as Rebecca clutched her throbbing arm, tears streaming down her face while her husband Thomas stood in the doorway doing absolutely nothing. Martha's face was twisted with rage, her gray hair pulled back so tight it seemed to stretch her wrinkled skin even further. Rebecca had only suggested that perhaps they could afford to buy better flour for the bread, something that would not turn hard as stone by the second day, but apparently that qualified as talking back in this household. Thomas finally stepped forward, but only to take his mother's side. His weak chin trembled as he spoke. "Rebecca, you know better than to question Mother's decisions. She has been running households since before you were born." Rebecca wanted to scream at him, wanted to tell him that she was his wife and deserved respect, but the waves of pain radiating from her arm made her dizzy. She could see the unnatural angle of her forearm, the way it bent slightly where it should have been straight. Martha had shoved her hard enough that when Rebecca tried to catch herself on the counter edge, something had snapped. The sound had been sickening, like a green branch breaking. "You have made your bed," Martha said coldly, smoothing down her dark dress. "A woman who cannot hold her tongue is a woman who brings shame to her family. Perhaps this will teach you proper respect." Rebecca stared at her husband, waiting for him to defend her, to call for a doctor, to do anything that resembled the man she thought she had married 2 years ago. But Thomas just looked at the floor, his shoulders hunched. He had always been under his mother's thumb, but Rebecca had believed that marriage would change things, that they would build their own life together. How foolish she had been. Martha had moved into their home 3 months after the wedding, claiming she had nowhere else to go after selling her property in Los Angeles. Since then, Rebecca had become a servant in her own house, constantly criticized, constantly belittled, and now physically harmed. "I need a doctor," Rebecca managed to say through gritted teeth. "Doctors cost money," Martha snapped. "Money that we cannot waste because you were clumsy." "You pushed me." The words were out before Rebecca could stop them, and she saw Martha's hand rise again, but this time something inside Rebecca broke that was not physical. She stumbled backward, cradling her injured arm, and ran for the door. Behind her, she could hear Thomas calling her name weakly, but she did not stop. She could not stop. If she stayed in that house one more minute, she would lose whatever remained of herself. The afternoon sun was brutal as Rebecca stumbled down the dirt road that led into the center of San Pedro. The town was small, situated near the harbor where ships came and went with cargo. The smell of salt and fish hung in the air, mixing with dust and horse manure. Rebecca's vision blurred with tears and pain as she walked, not knowing where she was going, just knowing she had to get away. Her arm hung uselessly at her side, and every step sent fresh jolts of agony through her body. She passed the general store where Mrs. Patterson was sweeping the front porch. The older woman looked up, her eyes widening in concern, but Rebecca kept walking. She could not face questions right now. She could not face pity. All she wanted was for someone to help her, to fix her arm, to tell her that she was not worthless just because she had dared to have an opinion. At the edge of town, there was a small ranch that belonged to a man Rebecca had only seen a few times. People called him Aaron Brooks, and the rumors about him varied wildly. Some said he had been a lawman up north who had gotten tired of the violence. Others claimed he had been a soldier who had seen too much death. A few whispered that he had killed a man in a duel and come to California to escape his past. Whatever the truth, he kept to himself mostly, raising horses and occasionally doing odd jobs around town. He was probably in his late 20s, with dark hair that fell past his collar and eyes that seemed to see too much. Rebecca found herself walking toward his property without consciously deciding to do so. Maybe it was because she had once overheard someone say that Aaron knew how to tend injuries from his time in the cavalry. Maybe it was because his ranch was away from the center of town, away from prying eyes. Or maybe it was simply because she was desperate and in agony, and he was the only person she could think of who might help without asking too many questions or charging money she did not have. The ranch was modest, just a small house, a barn, and a corral where several horses grazed. As Rebecca approached, she saw Aaron working near the barn. His shirt sleeves rolled up as he repaired a section of fence. He looked up at the sound of her footsteps, and his expression changed immediately from concentration to concern. "Madam?" He dropped his tools and strode toward her quickly. "What happened?" Rebecca opened her mouth to speak, but suddenly the pain and fear and humiliation of the past hour overwhelmed her. Her knees buckled, and Aaron caught her before she could fall, his strong hand steadying her gently. Up close, she could see that his eyes were a striking shade of blue-gray, like storm clouds over the ocean. "Your arm," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger as he saw the unnatural angle. "Who did this to you?" "I fell," Rebecca said automatically, the lie coming easily after 2 years of hiding bruises and making excuses. Aaron's jaw clenched, and he looked directly into her eyes. "No, you did not, but we can talk about that after I set this. Come on, can you walk to the house?" She nodded, and he kept one hand lightly on her back as they walked, not touching her injured arm, but staying close enough to catch her if she stumbled again. His presence was surprisingly comforting. There was a quiet strength about him that made Rebecca feel safer than she had in months. Inside the small house, everything was neat and simple. A table, a few chairs, a stone fireplace, shelves with books and supplies. Aaron guided her to a chair and then moved quickly to gather what he needed. Rebecca watched through a haze of pain as he brought out strips of cloth, wooden splints, and a bottle of whiskey. "This is going to hurt," he said, kneeling in front of her. "I'm not going to lie to you about that, but I have set broken bones before, and I know what I am doing. The question is, do you trust me?" Rebecca looked into his eyes and saw only honest concern there. No judgment, no anger directed at her, just a genuine desire to help. She nodded. "I need you to drink some of this first," Aaron said, handing her the whiskey bottle. "It will help with the pain." Rebecca had never been much of a drinker, but she took several large swallows, coughing as the liquid burned down her throat. Aaron waited patiently, and when she nodded that she was ready, he very carefully took her injured arm in his hands. His touch was surprisingly gentle for such a rough-looking man. "I am going to examine it first, see exactly where the break is," he explained. His fingers moved along her arm with practiced care, and despite the pain, Rebecca appreciated that he was telling her what he was doing. Thomas never explained anything. He just expected her to follow orders. "It is a clean break of the ulna," Aaron said after a moment. "That is actually good news. It should heal well if we set it properly and keep it immobilized. On 3, I'm going to pull and realign the bone. Are you ready?" Rebecca gripped the edge of the chair with her good hand and nodded, bracing herself. 1, 2, 3. The pain was blinding, white-hot agony that made Rebecca cry out. But Aaron's hands were sure and quick, and within seconds it was over. He was already wrapping her arm, securing the splints, his movements efficient but careful. When he finished, he sat back on his heels and looked at her with an expression that was part concern and part something else, something that looked like restrained fury. "Thank you," Rebecca whispered, her voice shaking. "You do not need to thank me for basic decency," Aaron said quietly. He stood and poured her a glass of water from a pitcher on the table. "Drink this. You need to stay hydrated." Rebecca sipped the water, feeling the whiskey starting to dull the worst of the pain. She should leave, she knew. She should go back to Thomas and Martha and face whatever consequences awaited her. But the thought made her stomach turn with dread. "I should go," she said, but she did not move. "Where?" Aaron asked, pulling up another chair and sitting down across from her. "Back to whoever did this to you? I told you, I fell. And I told you, that is not true." Aaron leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Look, I do not know your situation, and you do not have to tell me if you do not want to. But I do know what a deliberately inflicted injury looks like, and that is what you have. So before you go running back to a place where someone broke your arm, maybe take a minute to think about whether that is really where you want to be. Rebecca felt fresh tears spring to her eyes. It is not that simple. It never is, Aaron agreed. But it also does not have to be as complicated as we make it. Let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself even if you do not say it out loud. Do you feel safe in your home? The question hit Rebecca like a physical blow. No one had ever asked her that before. No one had ever seemed to care whether she felt safe or happy or valued. She looked down at her splinted arm, at the evidence of what her life had become, and suddenly she could not hold back the truth anymore. No, she whispered, I do not feel safe. I have not felt safe in a long time. Aaron nodded slowly, as if this confirmed what he had already suspected. Then stay here tonight. You can have the bedroom. I will sleep in the barn. In the morning, when you have had some rest and the shock has worn off, we can figure out what comes next. But right now you need to take care of yourself. I cannot, Rebecca protested. People will talk. My husband will be furious. His mother will say I am a disgrace. His mother, Aaron repeated, and understanding dawned in his eyes. She is the one who did this. Rebecca did not confirm or deny it, but her silence was answer enough. Aaron stood and walked to the window, looking out at the setting sun. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. I have never understood people who hurt those weaker than themselves. It is the worst kind of cowardice, and I especially do not understand men who stand by and let it happen. Thomas is not a bad man, Rebecca said, though even as she spoke the words, she wondered why she was defending him. He just loves his mother. Loving your mother does not mean letting her break your wife's arm, Aaron said flatly. He turned back to face her. But like I said, we do not have to figure everything out tonight. First things first, you need food and rest. When did you last eat? Rebecca tried to remember and realized it had been breakfast, and even that had only been a small piece of bread and some weak coffee. Martha controlled all the food in the house and seemed to delight in keeping Rebecca just slightly hungry all the time. This morning, she admitted. Aaron shook his head and moved to the stove. Well, that explains why you are so pale. Let me make us some dinner. Rebecca watched in amazement as Aaron efficiently prepared a meal of beans, bacon, and fresh bread. He moved around the kitchen with the ease of someone who was used to taking care of himself. When he set a plate in front of her, the portions were generous, and the smell made her stomach growl audibly. Eat, he said simply, sitting down with his own plate. You do not have to talk if you do not want to. Just eat. So Rebecca ate, and it was the best meal she had had in months, not because the food was fancy, but because she could eat without someone criticizing every bite, without someone telling her she was being greedy or wasteful. Aaron ate his own food and did not comment on how much she took or how fast she ate. He just let her be. After dinner, Aaron showed her to the bedroom. It was small but clean, with a sturdy bed covered in quilts and a window that looked out toward the ocean in the distance. Rebecca stood in the doorway, suddenly feeling overwhelmed by this stranger's kindness. Why are you helping me? She asked. Aaron considered the question for a moment. Because someone should have helped you a long time ago, and they did not. Because I know what it is like to feel trapped and helpless. And because, speak your mind here, Rebecca. In this house, you are allowed to have opinions and thoughts and feelings. You are allowed to take up space and ask for what you need. Whatever you have been told, whatever you have been made to believe, you are worth more than how they have been treating you. Rebecca felt something crack open inside her chest, something that had been locked away and frozen for so long. She had been holding herself together through sheer force of will, but Aaron's words, spoken with such quiet conviction, broke through her defenses. She started to cry, really cry. Not the silent tears she had shed earlier, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. Aaron stood there awkwardly for a moment, and then he did something that surprised them both. He stepped forward and very carefully put his arms around her, mindful of her injured arm, and just held her while she cried. He did not tell her to stop or to calm down. He did not make her feel weak for showing emotion. He just stood there, solid and warm and safe, and let her fall apart. When Rebecca finally cried herself out, she pulled back, embarrassed. "I'm sorry, I should not have done that." "Why not?" Aaron asked. "It seems to me you had plenty of reason to cry. Nothing wrong with it." He stepped back, giving her space, and Rebecca realized that she had not felt this steady in years. The arm still hurt, but the pain was manageable now, and more importantly, she felt like she could breathe properly for the first time in months. "Get some rest," Aaron said. "We will talk more in the morning. And Rebecca, if you need anything during the night, anything at all, I will be right outside. You are safe here." After he left, closing the door quietly behind him, Rebecca sat on the edge of the bed and tried to process everything that had happened. Just this morning, she had been trapped in a nightmare with no way out. Now she was in the home of a man she barely knew, but somehow she believed him when he said she was safe. There was something about Aaron Brooks, something steady and honest and strong, that made her want to trust him. She changed into a nightshirt that Aaron had left for her, which was far too big but clean and soft, and climbed into bed. Despite everything, or perhaps because of everything, she fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted by pain and emotion and the first stirrings of hope. She woke once in the night from a nightmare about Martha's furious face, but then she remembered where she was, and she let herself drift back to sleep. When Rebecca woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the window, and for a moment she was disoriented. Then memory came flooding back, along with a dull ache in her arm. She sat up carefully and looked at the splint Aaron had made. His work was neat and professional, the strips of cloth wrapped firmly but not too tight. She could hear sounds from the main room of the house and smell coffee brewing. When she emerged, still wearing Aaron's oversized nightshirt, she found him at the stove making breakfast. He looked up and smiled, and Rebecca realized it was the first genuine smile anyone had directed at her in a very long time. "Morning," he said. "How is the arm?" "It hurts, but not as bad as yesterday," Rebecca admitted. "Thank you again for helping me." "You already thanked me. No need to keep doing it." Aaron poured her a cup of coffee and set it on the table. "I have been thinking about your situation. You have some decisions to make, and I want you to know that whatever you decide, I will support you. But I also want you to know that you have options." Rebecca sat down and wrapped her good hand around the warm mug. "What kind of options?" "You could go back to your husband and try to make things work, though personally I think that is a terrible idea given that he did nothing while his mother broke your arm. You could try to get a divorce, which is difficult but not impossible in California. You could leave town entirely and start over somewhere new. Or," Aaron paused, seeming to choose his words carefully, "you could stay here for a while, at least until your arm heals, and figure things out without pressure." "I cannot stay here," Rebecca said automatically. "People would talk. It would ruin both our reputations." "I do not give a damn about my reputation," Aaron said bluntly. "And honestly, you should not either. Reputation is just what other people think about you, and most people are too busy worrying about their own problems to spend much time thinking about yours. But if it bothers you, we can tell people you are my cousin from back east, visiting while you recover from an accident." Rebecca looked at him, at this man who was offering her sanctuary without asking for anything in return. "Why would you do that? You do not even know me." Aaron sat down across from her with his own coffee. "That is true, but I know enough. I know you are brave enough to run away from a bad situation even when you are hurt and scared. I know you have been beaten down for a long time, but you still have fight in you, or you would not have talked back to your mother-in-law in the first place. And I know that sometimes people need help, and if I can provide that help, then I should. But what do you get out of it?" Aaron laughed, a low, warm sound. "You know, that is a sad question. It says a lot about your life that you cannot imagine someone helping you without expecting something in return. But to answer your question, what I get is the satisfaction of knowing I did the right thing. That is enough for me." Rebecca stared into her coffee, feeling emotions she could not quite name swirling inside her. "I do not know what to do," she admitted quietly. "I feel like I should go back to Thomas. He is my husband. I made vows." "He made vows too," Aaron pointed out, "to love, honor, and cherish you. Has he been doing that?" The question hung in the air between them. Rebecca thought about the past 2 years, about how Thomas had gradually withdrawn from her, how he had allowed his mother to take over their home and their lives, how he had stopped touching her with affection, stopped asking about her day, stopped seeing her as a person rather than just another piece of furniture in the house. "No," she said finally, "he has not." "Then maybe it is time to stop worrying about what you should do and start thinking about what you want to do," Aaron suggested. "But like I said, you do not have to decide everything today. Take your time, heal. And when you are ready, we will figure out the next steps together." The word together resonated in Rebecca's chest. She had been alone for so long, even when she was surrounded by people. The idea that someone was offering to stand beside her to help her navigate the difficult path ahead was almost overwhelming. "Okay," she said softly. "I will stay, at least for a few days. But I want to help. I cannot just sit around doing nothing." Aaron smiled again. "Fair enough. Though with that arm, you are limited in what you can do. But I'm sure we can find some way for you to contribute if it makes you feel better." They spent the morning in comfortable companionship. Aaron went about his chores, tending to the horses and fixing the fence, while Rebecca, despite his protests, insisted on at least tidying up the house and preparing vegetables for lunch. It was hard to do much with one arm, but she managed, and there was something deeply satisfying about working in a space where no one criticized her methods or told her she was doing everything wrong. Around midday, they heard the sound of a horse approaching. Rebecca's heart leaped into her throat, terrified that it might be Thomas or worse, Martha. But Aaron squeezed her shoulder reassuringly as he moved to the door. "Stay inside," and he said quietly, "I will handle this." Rebecca watched through the window as Aaron stepped out onto the porch. The rider was indeed Thomas, looking disheveled and anxious. Rebecca could not hear what they were saying, but she could see Thomas gesturing emphatically while Aaron stood with his arms crossed, his posture radiating calm authority. After several minutes, Aaron came back inside. "He wants to talk to you. I told him that is entirely up to you, and if you do not want to see him, I will send him away." Rebecca took a deep breath. Part of her wanted to hide, to avoid the confrontation, but another part, the part that was starting to remember what it felt like to have a spine, knew that she had to face this eventually. "I will talk to him," she said, "but I want you there." "Of course." They went outside together, and Rebecca saw Thomas's expression change from hope to confusion to anger as he took in her splinted arm and the fact that she was standing close to Aaron. "Rebecca, what are you doing here?" Thomas demanded. "You need to come home right now. Mother is very upset." "Mother is upset?" Rebecca repeated, feeling anger rise in her chest. "Your mother broke my arm, Thomas, and you did nothing." "She did not mean to hurt you that badly," Thomas said, his voice taking on a wheedling quality that Rebecca had learned to hate. "You know how she is. You should not have provoked her." "Should not have provoked her?" Rebecca's voice was rising now. "I suggested buying better flour. That is not provocation. That is a reasonable opinion. And even if I had said something truly disrespectful, which I did not, that does not give anyone the right to physically assault me." Thomas looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "You are making too much of this. Just come home, and we will forget the whole thing." "No." The word came out strong and clear, and Rebecca felt Aaron move slightly closer to her, a silent show of support. Thomas's face reddened. "What do you mean, no? You are my wife." "I am your wife, which means you are supposed to protect me, not stand by while your mother hurts me. You have broken your vows, Thomas, not me." "This is ridiculous, Roi," Thomas sputtered. "You cannot just run away because you had a disagreement with Mother." "A disagreement?" Aaron spoke for the first time, his voice dangerously quiet. "That is what you are calling a broken arm? A disagreement?" Thomas turned his attention to Aaron, trying to puff up his chest to look more imposing, but he was several inches shorter and much less physically impressive. "This is none of your concern. This is between me and my wife." "It became my concern when she showed up here injured and terrified," Aaron said. "And here is what is going to happen. Rebecca is going to stay here until she decides what she wants to do. You are not going to harass her or threaten her or try to force her to come back. If you do, we are going to have a problem, and trust me, you do not want that." "Are you threatening me?" Thomas demanded, but there was fear in his eyes. "I am making you a promise," Aaron corrected. "Leave Rebecca alone. Let her heal. Let her think. And if she decides she wants to talk to you, she knows where to find you." Thomas looked between Aaron and Rebecca could see him trying to calculate his options. Finally, he seemed to deflate. "Fine," he said bitterly, "but do not come crying to me when people start talking about you living with a strange man. Your reputation will be ruined." "I think I will survive," Rebecca said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Thomas mounted his horse and rode away without another word, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Rebecca watched him go and felt an unexpected sense of relief. She had stood up to him. She had said no, and the world had not ended. "You did well," Aaron said quietly. "I feel sick," Rebecca admitted, her hands shaking slightly. "That is normal. Confrontation is hard, especially when you're not used to it. Come on, let us go inside. You look like you need to sit down." Over the next few days, Rebecca settled into a routine at Aaron's ranch. She helped where she could, cooking and mending and doing small tasks that did not require two functional arms. Aaron was unfailingly patient and kind, never pushing her to talk about her feelings, but always available to listen when she wanted to. They talked while they worked, sharing stories from their pasts. Rebecca learned that Aaron had indeed been in the cavalry, serving in Arizona territory during some of the conflicts with Apache groups. He spoke about it matter-of-factly, neither glorifying nor dismissing the violence he had seen. "I got tired of fighting," he told her one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Tired of seeing good people die for reasons that never made much sense to me. So when my enlistment was up, I took my pay and came here, bought this land, started raising horses. It is a simple life, but it is mine, and I do not have to answer to anyone." "That sounds wonderful," Rebecca said wistfully, "to not have to answer to anyone." "You will get there," Aaron said with confidence. "It just takes time." As the days passed, Rebecca found herself noticing things about Aaron that had nothing to do with gratitude for his help. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gentleness of his hands when he changed the wrappings on her arm, the sound of his laughter, which was rare but genuine, the way he listened to her, really listened, treating her words like they mattered. She also noticed the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she was not paying attention. There was warmth in his gaze, and something that might have been longing, but he never acted on it. He was always respectful, always careful to maintain appropriate distance. One morning, about a week after Rebecca had arrived, she woke to find Aaron already up and working in the corral with a new horse. She made coffee and brought a cup out to him, watching as he worked with the animal. He had a way with horses, calm and confident, but never dominating. He seemed to understand that the horse needed to choose to trust him rather than being forced into submission. "You're good at that," Rebecca said when he took a break to drink the coffee. "I like horses," Aaron said with a shrug. "They are honest. You always know where you stand with them. If they do not like you, they make it clear. If they trust you, they will do anything for you. No games, no manipulation, just straightforward relationship." Rebecca understood what he was really saying. After years of navigating Martha's passive-aggressive comments and Thomas's weak attempts at peacekeeping, the idea of straightforward relationships sounded like paradise. "I wish people were more like horses," she said. Aaron laughed. "Some of us try to be." He set down his cup and looked at her seriously. "Rebecca, I want to ask you something, and you do not have to answer if you do not want to. But what are you planning to do? Your arm is healing well. In another week or two, you will be able to manage on your own. Have you thought about what comes next?" Rebecca had been avoiding thinking about this question, but she knew she could not put it off forever. I do not want to go back to Thomas, she said slowly. I know that now. But I do not know how to move forward. I have no money, no family who would help me, no way to support myself. You could file for divorce, Aaron suggested. California has relatively progressive laws compared to some states. Cruelty is grounds for divorce. Even if I could get a divorce, then what? I have no skills, no education beyond basic reading and writing. What work could I possibly do? Aaron was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was careful, as if he was stepping onto uncertain ground. You could stay here. Rebecca's heart skipped a beat. Aaron, we have been through this. People are already talking. I do not mean as my supposed cousin, Aaron said, meeting her eyes directly. I mean as my wife, real wife. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Rebecca stared at him, unable to process what he had just said. I know this is sudden, Aaron continued, the words coming faster now, as if he had been holding them back, and they were finally breaking free. And I know you barely know me. But Rebecca, this past week, having you here, it has been the best week I have had in years. I like talking to you. I like the way you hum while you cook, and the way you laugh at my terrible jokes. I like how strong you are, even when you do not realize it. And I think maybe, possibly, you might feel something for me too, even if it is just the beginning of something. Rebecca's mind was racing. She did feel something for Aaron. Had been trying not to acknowledge it because it seemed impossible and inappropriate. But now he was offering her not just sanctuary, but a future, a real partnership with someone who saw her as an equal. I am still married to Thomas, she said weakly. So we wait until you are not? Aaron said simply. We file for divorce, we wait out whatever time is required, and then, if you want to, we get married properly. In the meantime, you stay here, and I will sleep in the barn to keep things appropriate, and we will get to know each other better. No pressure, no expectations, just two people figuring out if they want to build a life together. Why would you want to marry me? Rebecca asked, voicing her deepest insecurity. I am damaged goods, a woman who left her husband. People will say terrible things about me. People say terrible things about everyone, Aaron said, and you are not damaged goods. You are a survivor. You are brave and stubborn, and you have a good heart. Those are the things that matter to me, not what some gossips think. Rebecca felt tears spring to her eyes again. I do not deserve you. That is not for you to decide, Aaron said gently. He reached out and took her good hand in his. Look, I am not asking you to decide everything right now. I just want you to know that this is an option if you want it. We can take this as slow as you need. But Rebecca, I am already half in love with you, and I think given time, I could love you completely. The question is whether you could ever feel the same way about me. Rebecca looked down at their joined hands, at the calluses on Aaron's palms, and the strength in his fingers. She thought about the past week, about how safe she had felt, how valued. She thought about how her heart lifted every time Aaron walked into her room, how she found herself looking forward to their conversations, how the thought of leaving this place made her chest ache. I think I already do, she whispered. Feel the same way, I mean. I've been trying not to because it seemed wrong, but Aaron, when I'm with you, I feel like I can breathe. I feel like I matter. And that is not something I have felt in a very long time. Aaron's face broke into a wide smile, and before Rebecca quite knew what was happening, he had pulled her into a gentle embrace, careful of her injured arm. She rested her head against his chest and listened to the steady thump of his heartbeat. And for the first time in years, she felt like she was home. They stood there for a long moment, and then Aaron pulled back slightly to look down at her. So we are doing this? Really doing this? We are really doing this, Rebecca confirmed. And then she started to laugh, giddy with relief and joy, and the sheer improbability of it all. I came here with a broken arm, and I'm leaving with a new life. You have not left yet, Aaron pointed out, grinning. In fact, if I have my way, you are never leaving. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Aaron helped Rebecca file for divorce, which required them to travel to Los Angeles to meet with a lawyer. The lawyer was a stern-faced man named Mr. Harrison, who listened to Rebecca's story with increasing disapproval directed entirely at Thomas and Martha. "You should have no trouble getting the divorce, he said. "The broken arm alone would be sufficient grounds, but the pattern of abuse you have described makes it an open and shut case. The only question is whether your husband will contest it." "If he does, we will deal with it," Aaron said firmly, his hand resting supportively on Rebecca's shoulder. Thomas did contest the divorce, but only half-heartedly. At the hearing, which took place in late October, he claimed that Rebecca had abandoned him and was living in sin with another man. But when the judge asked about Rebecca's broken arm, Thomas stumbled over his words and could not provide a convincing explanation. Martha was called as a witness and proceeded to make things worse by berating the judge for questioning her actions in her own household. "So you admit you pushed Mrs. Edwards?" the judge asked, his bushy eyebrows rising. "I disciplined an insolent girl who needed to learn her place," Martha snapped. "And you, Mr. Edwards, you witnessed this and did nothing to protect your wife?" Thomas opened and closed his mouth like a fish before finally mumbling something about respecting his mother. The judge, a gray-haired man who looked like he had heard every story imaginable, banged his gavel. "Divorce granted on the grounds of cruelty. Mrs. Edwards, you are free to resume your maiden name if you choose, and you are under no further obligation to these people. Court dismissed." Outside the courthouse, Rebecca stood in the California sunshine and felt like chains had been lifted from her soul. Aaron stood beside her, not touching but close enough that she could feel his presence like a warm anchor. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Free," Rebecca said simply. "Terrified, but free." "The terrified part will pass," Aaron promised. "The free part is forever." They could have married immediately, but they decided to wait a few more months to give Rebecca time to truly heal both physically and emotionally. Her arm mended well under Aaron's careful attention, and by late November she had full range of motion back, though it ached when the weather changed. During those months, they built a partnership that went beyond romance. Rebecca learned how to help with the horses, discovering that she had a natural affinity for the animals. Aaron taught her to ride, patient through her initial fear and encouraging when she started to gain confidence. They worked side by side, repairing the barn, planting a winter garden, preparing for the rainy season. They also talked endlessly about everything and nothing. Rebecca told Aaron about her childhood, about parents who had died when she was young and a guardian who had been more interested in marrying her off than educating her. Aaron shared his own painful memories of war, of friends lost and choices that still haunted him. "I killed men," he told her one evening as they sat by the fire. "I was a soldier. It was my job, but that does not make it easy to live with. Every life I took was someone's son, maybe someone's husband or father. I think about that a lot." "You did what you had to do to survive," Rebecca said softly. "That is different than cruelty for its own sake." "Maybe," Aaron said, "but it is still heavy to carry." Rebecca took his hand. "Then let me help you carry it. That is what we do, right? We help each other with the heavy things." Aaron looked at her with such love that Rebecca felt her breath catch. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from a very stubborn cowboy who told me I was allowed to speak my mind," Rebecca said with a small smile. As Christmas approached, they decided to get married in a simple ceremony at the small church in San Pedro. Rebecca made herself a new dress from fabric Aaron bought for her in town, deep blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes. She did not have many possessions, having left almost everything behind when she fled from Thomas, but Aaron insisted she was all he needed. The ceremony was attended by only a handful of people. Mrs. Patterson from the general store came, having become an unexpected friend to Rebecca. A few of Aaron's acquaintances from town showed up, including the blacksmith and the man who ran the livery stable. The preacher was a kind-faced man named Reverend Walsh, who had heard Rebecca's story and approved wholeheartedly of the marriage. "Do you, Aaron Brooks, take Rebecca to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part?" "I do," Aaron said, his voice strong and sure, his eyes never leaving Rebecca's face. "And do you, Rebecca Ellis, take Aaron to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part?" Rebecca thought about how different this moment was from her first wedding, when she had been young and naive and had believed in fairy tales. Now she was older, scarred by experience, but also stronger and more certain of what she wanted. "I do," she said clearly. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Aaron, you may kiss your bride." Aaron cupped Rebecca's face gently in his hands and kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart soar. It was nothing like the perfunctory kisses Thomas had given her. This was a promise, a beginning, a declaration of everything they were choosing to build together. The small gathering cheered, and Mrs. Patterson dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. After the ceremony, they had a modest celebration at the ranch, with food and music and laughter. As the sun set and their guests departed, Aaron and Rebecca stood together on the porch of what was now truly their home. "Happy?" Aaron asked, his arm around her waist. "Happier than I have ever been," Rebecca confirmed. She turned to face him fully. "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for believing I was worth saving." "You saved yourself," Aaron corrected. "I just provided a safe place for you to land. Everything else, all the courage and strength and determination, that was all you." "Then thank you for being my safe place," Rebecca amended. They kissed again, longer this time, and then Aaron swept her up in his arms and carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing. That night, they came together as husband and wife with a gentleness and passion that was nothing like Rebecca's previous experience of marriage. Aaron treated her like she was precious, like her pleasure mattered as much as his own. And Rebecca discovered that physical intimacy could be joyful rather than a duty to be endured. The first year of their marriage was not without challenges. Money was sometimes tight, especially during a period when several of Aaron's horses came down with an illness that required expensive medicine. They had disagreements, as all couples do, about everything from how to spend their limited funds to whether they should expand the ranch. But through it all, they maintained the foundation they had built in those early days. When they argued, they talked it through instead of letting resentment fester. When times were hard, they supported each other instead of assigning blame. And most importantly, Aaron never once tried to silence Rebecca or make her feel small. He meant what he had said that first day. In their home, she was free to speak her mind and her opinions were valued. In the spring of 1884, Rebecca discovered she was pregnant. She was nervous about telling Aaron, afraid that a baby would strain their still new marriage. But when she finally worked up the courage to share the news, Aaron's face lit up with pure joy. "We are going to have a baby," he repeated, as if he could not quite believe it. "We are going to have a baby," Rebecca confirmed. Aaron let out a whoop of excitement and spun her around carefully, then immediately set her down, worried about being too rough. "Are you feeling all right? Do you need anything? Should you be resting?" Rebecca laughed at his sudden anxiety. "I am pregnant, not made of glass. Women have babies all the time." "Yes, but this is our baby," Aaron said, placing his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Our family." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and Rebecca bloomed under Aaron's attentive care. He was almost comically protective, worrying about her doing too much work, insisting she eat more, checking that she was comfortable approximately every 5 minutes. Rebecca found his concern endearing even when it was slightly excessive. In November of 1884, after a long labor that had Aaron pacing the floor like a caged animal, Rebecca gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him James, after Aaron's father who had died when Aaron was young. When Aaron held his son for the first time, tears streaming down his face, Rebecca felt her heart might burst from happiness. "He is perfect," Aaron whispered, looking down at the tiny bundle in his arms. "You are perfect. Our family is perfect. Motherhood suited Rebecca in ways she had not expected. She loved the weight of James in her arms, the sweet baby smell of him, the way he would quiet when she sang to him. But she also appreciated that Aaron was an involved father from the start, changing diapers and walking the floor with James when he cried, treating parenting as a shared responsibility rather than solely woman's work. As James grew from infant to toddler, the ranch prospered. Aaron's reputation as a skilled horse trainer spread, and people came from as far as Los Angeles to buy his animals. Rebecca started keeping chickens and selling eggs in town, contributing to the family income and enjoying the sense of independence it gave her. In the evenings, after James was in bed, Aaron and Rebecca would sit together on the porch, talking about their day or simply enjoying the comfortable silence of two people who knew each other deeply. Sometimes Rebecca thought about her old life, about the woman she had been when she stumbled onto this property with a broken arm and broken spirit. That woman felt like a stranger now. One evening in the summer of 1886, as they watched 3-year-old James play with a patient old mare in the corral, Rebecca leaned against Aaron's shoulder with a contented sigh. "What are you thinking about?" Aaron asked, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "About how different my life is now," Rebecca said. "About how I almost stayed in that horrible situation because I did not think I had any other choice. About how lucky I am that I found you." "I am the lucky one," Aaron disagreed. "You could have gone anywhere when you left Thomas. You could have gotten help from anyone in town. But you came here to me and gave me the chance to be part of your life." "We are both lucky then," Rebecca compromised. She turned to look up at him. "Do you ever regret it? Taking me in that day? Your life was probably much simpler before I showed up." "Simpler, maybe," Aaron agreed. "But not better. Never better. Rebecca, you and James, you are my whole world. I would not change a single thing about how we came together because it led us here, to this moment, to this life we have built." Rebecca kissed him softly. "I love you, Aaron Brooks." "I love you too, Rebecca Brooks," Aaron replied. "Forever." In 1887, Rebecca gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Charlotte after Rebecca's mother. Charlotte was a spirited baby with her father's blue-gray eyes and her mother's dark hair. James was initially skeptical about having a sister, but quickly became fiercely protective of her. As the children grew, Rebecca made sure to teach them the values that she and Aaron held dear. She taught them that everyone deserved respect regardless of their station in life. She taught them that speaking your mind was not only acceptable, but necessary. She taught them to be kind but not weak, to be generous but not foolish, to be loving but to never accept abuse. Aaron taught them practical skills, how to ride and rope and care for animals, but he also taught them by example what it meant to be a good partner, showing them every day how to treat the person you love with respect and tenderness. The years passed in a blur of work and love and family. The ranch continued to thrive, and they eventually bought the adjacent property, expanding their holdings. Rebecca started a small lending library in town, sharing books with other women who were hungry for knowledge and connection. She became known as someone you could talk to if you were in trouble, and more than once she helped women escape situations similar to the one she had fled. In 1890, they welcomed a third child, another boy they named Samuel. The house that had once seemed so empty was now bursting with life and noise and love. There were hard days, of course, days when money was tight or children were sick or the work seemed endless. But there were far more good days, days filled with laughter and sunshine, and the deep satisfaction of building something meaningful together. On their 10th wedding anniversary in December of 1893, Aaron surprised Rebecca with a gift. It was a leather-bound journal with her initials embossed on the cover. "What is this for?" Rebecca asked, running her fingers over the smooth leather. "For your story," Aaron said. "For our story. I thought maybe you would want to write it down so the children can read it someday, so they can understand where they came from and what their mother survived to give them the life they have." Rebecca opened the journal, looking at the blank pages waiting to be filled. "I would not even know where to start." "Start with the truth," Aaron suggested. Start with the day you walked onto this ranch with a broken arm and changed my life forever. So Rebecca began to write, sitting at the kitchen table in the evenings while Aaron read to the children before bed. She wrote about her first marriage and the darkness of those years. She wrote about the moment she decided to run, about finding Aaron, about the way he had set her arm and told her she could speak her mind. She wrote about falling in love, about building a life, about becoming the person she was always meant to be. Sometimes the children would ask what she was writing, and she would tell them it was a story about a woman who learned to be brave. When they were older, she promised she would let them read it. In 1895, Rebecca encountered Martha and Thomas in town for the first time since the divorce. She was with Charlotte and Samuel shopping for supplies when she turned a corner and found herself face to face with her former husband and mother-in-law. Her first instinct was to flee, but then she felt Charlotte's small hand slip into hers and she remembered who she was now. She was not that frightened girl anymore. "Rebecca," Thomas said, looking uncomfortable. He had aged poorly, his weak face now sagging and lined. "Thomas," Rebecca replied evenly. "Martha." Martha glared at her with undisguised hatred. "You look well," she said, and it sounded like an accusation. "I am well," Rebecca confirmed. "These are my children, Charlotte and Samuel. My oldest son James is at home with my husband." "Your husband," Martha sneered. "That cowboy you ran off with." "That cowboy is the best man I have ever known," Rebecca said calmly. "And he has given me a life I never dreamed possible. I have 3 beautiful children, a home I love, and a partnership based on mutual respect. I am very blessed." Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "Mother has not been well," he said, as if this was somehow relevant. "I'm sorry to hear that," Rebecca said, and meant it, because she could afford to be gracious now. She had won, not by hurting them, but by building something beautiful with the wreckage they had made of her life. "But I must be going. The children need to get home before dark." As she walked away, Charlotte looked up at her. "Mama, who were those people?" "No one important, sweetheart," Rebecca said. "It's just ghosts from a long time ago." That night, she told Aaron about the encounter. They were lying in bed, the house quiet except for the usual night sounds. "How did it feel?" Aaron asked. "Seeing them again?" "It felt like closing a door that was already locked," Rebecca said thoughtfully. There was no anger, no fear, just a kind of distant pity. Martha looked old and bitter, and Thomas looked weak and sad. They are living exactly the life they deserve. "While you are living the life you made for yourself," Aaron said, pulling her closer. "I am proud of you." "We made it together," Rebecca corrected. "I could not have done any of this without you." "Sure you could have," Aaron disagreed. "Maybe not in exactly the same way, but you would have found a path forward. You are too strong to stay broken forever." Rebecca thought about that, about the woman she had been and the woman she had become. "Maybe," she acknowledged, "but I'm glad I did not have to do it alone. I am glad I had you." As the century drew to a close, the Brooks family continued to flourish. James grew into a responsible young man who shared his father's way with horses. Charlotte became a voracious reader with dreams of becoming a teacher. Samuel was still young but showed signs of his mother's stubborn determination. In 1899, on a warm spring evening, the entire family gathered on the porch for supper. James was telling a story about a difficult horse he had worked with that day, making Charlotte and Samuel laugh with his dramatic reenactment. Aaron sat at the head of the table, his arm around Rebecca's shoulders, occasionally interjecting with his own commentary on the story. Rebecca looked around at these people, her people, and felt overwhelming gratitude. "What is it?" Aaron asked quietly, noticing the tears in her eyes. "I am just happy," Rebecca said, "so completely, overwhelmingly happy that sometimes it is hard to believe this is my real life." "It is real," Aaron assured her, "every bit of it, and it is going to keep getting better." He was right. In 1900, James married a sweet-natured girl from town named Sarah, and by 1901, Rebecca and Aaron were grandparents to a baby girl named Emma. Charlotte did become a teacher, opening a small school on their property where she taught not only her own siblings but children from neighboring farms. Samuel decided he wanted to be a veterinarian, fascinated by animal medicine after watching his father care for sick horses. Through all of this, Aaron and Rebecca remained the center of it all, the foundation upon which this entire family was built. They grew older together, silver appearing in their hair, lines deepening on their faces, but their love never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year, each challenge weathered, each joy shared. In 1902, on a particularly beautiful autumn evening, Rebecca finished writing in the journal Aaron had given her years before. She had filled every page with her story, from that terrible day when her arm was broken to this moment of contentment and peace. She closed the leather cover and ran her hand over it one more time, thinking about the journey those pages contained. Aaron came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Finished?" "Finished," Rebecca confirmed. She turned in his arms to face him. "Thank you for giving me a story worth writing." "Thank you for choosing to write it with me," Aaron replied. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. "I love you, Rebecca Brooks. From that first day when you walked onto my property looking fierce and scared and determined, I have loved you." "And I love you," Rebecca said. "You told me I could speak my mind here, and that was the first moment I started to heal. You gave me my voice back, and then you gave me everything else. A home, a family, a purpose, a life worth living." They stood there in the golden light of sunset, holding each other, surrounded by the life they had built together. In the distance, they could hear James teaching Emma to ride, Charlotte calling everyone for supper, Samuel laughing at something his sister had said, the sounds of family, of home, of love. Rebecca thought about the girl she had been, trapped and voiceless, and convinced she deserved nothing better. She thought about the moment she had chosen to run, even though she had no idea where she was running to. She thought about Aaron's hands as he set her broken arm, his words as he told her she was allowed to have opinions, his eyes when he told her he was falling in love with her. Every choice, every risk, every moment of courage had led her here, to this place, to this man, to this life. And she would not change a single thing. "What are you thinking about?" Aaron asked, as he had asked 1,000 times before. "About broken arms and second chances," Rebecca said. "About cowboys who know how to heal more than just bones. About how sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads you to the best thing in your life." "No regrets, Sparsians?" Aaron asked. "Not a single one," Rebecca said firmly. "Well, maybe one. I regret that I did not find you sooner." "We found each other exactly when we were supposed to," Aaron said wisely. "Not a moment too soon or too late, just right." They walked together toward the house, where their family waited, their hands clasped tightly. Behind them the sun set over the California hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. A new century was dawning, full of changes and challenges they could not yet imagine. But whatever came, they would face it together, as they had faced everything else. Rebecca paused at the door and looked back one more time at the barn where Aaron had been working the day she stumbled onto his property. So much had changed since that day, but the most important things remained constant. Love, respect, partnership, family, the things that truly mattered. "Come on," Aaron said, gently tugging her hand. "Everyone is waiting for us." "Let them wait another minute," Rebecca said. She stood on her toes and kissed him deeply, putting into that kiss all the love and gratitude and joy she felt. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "What was that for?" Aaron asked. "For everything," Rebecca said simply. "For being my hero when I needed one. For being my partner when I was ready for one. For being my home always." "Always," Aaron echoed, and led her inside to their family. The years continued to pass in their rhythm of seasons and celebrations, hardships and triumphs. Aaron and Rebecca grew old together, their hair turning white, their steps slowing, but their love remaining constant. They saw their children and grandchildren flourish, carrying forward the values they had worked so hard to instill. On their 40th wedding anniversary in 1923, their entire extended family gathered at the ranch to celebrate. There were children and grandchildren and even a few great-grandchildren running around. Tables laden with food stretched across the yard. Music filled the air. Aaron and Rebecca, both now in their 60s but still vital and engaged with life, sat together in chairs that had been brought out for them. They watched the festivities with deep contentment, occasionally commenting to each other about who had grown how much or who looked like whom. James approached them with a glass of wine for each. "To the best parents anyone could ask for," he said, raising his own glass in a toast. "You showed us what real love looks like, what real partnership means. Everything good in my life, I learned from watching you two." Charlotte and Samuel added their own toasts, and soon the entire gathering was celebrating Aaron and Rebecca, sharing stories and memories. Rebecca felt tears running down her cheeks, but they were happy tears, grateful tears. When the party finally began to wind down as evening approached, Aaron took Rebecca's hand. "Dance with me?" "Aaron, we are too old to dance," Rebecca protested, but she was smiling. "We are never too old to dance," Aaron disagreed. He helped her to her feet and pulled her into his arms. Someone started playing a slow waltz, and they moved together as they had for 4 decades, perfectly in sync. "Do you remember the first time we danced?" Aaron asked softly. "At our wedding," Rebecca said. "I was so nervous I stepped on your feet 3 times. "I remember thinking you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen," Aaron said, "and I remember being terrified that you would realize you deserved better than me and leave." "That was never a possibility," Rebecca assured him. "You were exactly what I needed, what I will always need." They danced until the music stopped, until the sun had fully set, until they were the only 2 people still swaying gently in the twilight. Around them, their family watched with smiles and misty eyes, witnessing the kind of love that most people only dream about. That night, lying in bed in the house that had been their home for over 40 years, Rebecca turned to Aaron. "We did it," she said. "We built something beautiful, something that will last long after we are gone." "We did," Aaron agreed. He took her hand and brought it to his lips. "And it all started because you were brave enough to run, and I was lucky enough to be there when you did." "We were both lucky," Rebecca said. "Lucky to find each other. Lucky to have this life. Lucky to have love." She fell asleep with her hand in Aaron's, safe and loved and content. And in the morning she woke to another day of the life she had built, one choice at a time, one moment of courage after another, until that broken, frightened woman she had been was transformed into someone strong and whole and happy. Rebecca Brooks had learned to speak her mind, and in doing so she had found her voice, her strength, her purpose, and her forever home in the arms of the cowboy who had set her broken arm and offered her the world.